So once again this week I had the privilege of sitting down with Julia Cannon to discuss the life and the legacy of her mother, Dolores Cannon. If you love Dolores Cannon, you are going to love this discussion. We get into some of the more convoluted concepts in Dolores's books. We even talk about the time that we are living through at the moment. Stay tuned, you are going to love this interview. You know, these people can just sense and perceive things that we can't, and often that's easy to label that person as crazy, and then they'll want to medicate it. We're also seeing this with a lot of young children now being medicated with things like ADHD because they say they're not normal.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And what my own personal thought, just from all the information that we've gotten, is I feel like many, like schizophrenia, I feel like it's the veil is either not there or so thin that they can see all these different things. And that's why all this information is coming in, and it's really hard to process sometimes because it's so much. Where, someone with a thicker veil, I guess we could call it, we're able to, it's coming in gradually as it's thinning, it's gradually coming in, and we're learning how to process it, how to understand it. Because if some of this stuff that we're getting now would have been all at once, that would have been hard. It's like, because it comes in drip feeding kind of thing, it's much easier to handle. It's like, okay, I got to work with this now. Okay. Sometimes it's overwhelming at first when it starts coming in, and it's like, okay, this is my new reality. This is what's happening now. But just imagine if all of that was there, and no instructions on what to do with it and how to work with it. Yeah, that's probably, I feel like that's very likely what many of the mental diagnoses and maybe even institutionalized diagnoses of that are from. It's they didn't know what else to do with it. Okay, well, let's just medicate it,
Yeah.
so damn it down. So, you know, it
Well,
makes sense
it's
a
kind of
little
like
bit.
everything. Yeah, no, you're exactly right, because it's kind of like everything, isn't it? I've heard you speak about this. You know, the first thing we do generally when we have pain in the body is we take a pain pill, and it's like, I think you said it like this. It's like you're just telling the higher self to shut up there. I'm not listening. I'm just gonna make you go.
Yeah, it's like, well, I don't understand. I don't understand that it's even my higher self talking to me, So it's like, I just want the pain to go away, and we're just going to do that. And so then, unfortunately, the higher self just has to, or it has to keep delivering that message, so it's going to get louder, which means more pain. So
Mm,
it's going to keep doing this round and round until finally you go, I can't do this anymore. What's the deal?
yeah,
See, when you start getting there, now you're looking deeper.
yeah. And I truly believe, because I think this is happening more and more through so many different ways, is people are starting to make the connection, the metaphysical connection between, the and this goes back to ancient wisdom traditions, and but we're start like, I mean, I just love your book. So I'll speak. I'm using it all the time because it really is the language of the body, as it says. This is how it communicates. And it's very literal. Tell me, how long did it take you to write? I know it's based on a lot of your mother's sessions, and it was years and years in the making, but what was it like putting together the book?
Oh, resistance. Your first, you're starting to ask them why, how long did it take? It took 7 years
Wow.
for no reason at all. There was no only except for my resistance. That
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah.
I just resisted. I wanted it. I don't know. There's so many different resistance things I was doing. It was hard for me to accept that I was supposed to do that. Mom was the writer. It was like, I don't know if I can write.
Yeah.
That was one.
That was a fear
Two,
that you had to push. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And then I tried to get out of that, and she's like, no, this is your book to write. I'm like, okay, all right. So I have to deal with that one. All right. Number two was I could see clearly two parts. I was like, okay, I can write the book in this way, or I can write the book in this way. And that's what was confusing me for a long time, is which way do I write the book? Okay. And now you see there's two parts. That's why there are two parts, is because those were the two different ways. Later, it was like, there are two parts to the book. That's why you're seeing it in two different ways. So, okay, but at first it's like, this isn't making sense. If I'm supposed to write this book, it should be very clear. Okay, that was resistance number two. Number three, it was like, if you really want me to write this book, it seems like you would just give me what to say. You would just essentially write it for me, right? If you're saying this is, you've got to do this, okay? Duh, that was just, I don't even know what that was. But how many people do that? It's like, but I definitely did. If you're saying that you need this information here, then just give it to me. I was expecting the 3 a.m. wake ups with all the information in my head because I heard that happens to people.
Yeah.
It didn't happen, So, but what I did notice was like in the classes, every class, I was getting that tap on the head. This is your book to write. And then I would get some information. I'd write it down every single time. And then later when I compared it, it was always the same. So I'm like, okay, apparently that has to be in the book. Whatever it was, I don't remember now, but those were things that had to be in there. The other thing, the other thing that was giving me resistance was people kept coming to me once mom said, oh, Julia's writing this book. And they would come to me, oh, you need to get this book. This is a wonderful book on the subject. You need to get this book. This is a wonderful book. And I'm like, if there's all these wonderful books on the subject, why do I need to write one? Again, this doesn't make sense to me. And so but then I heard them very clearly say that the other books, they're like resource books. You have to go to them. They said, we want people to understand the process so that they become the information, so they understand where they go for their information. You don't go to the book, you go to your higher self, you go to you, and they need to understand a process. And they're like, there isn't a process in these other ones about how to get the information for themselves. So it's like, okay, all right. Now, the thing that really got me, what finally did it, okay, so all of this, and I'm still doing all this resistance, dragging my feet in every class, they're hitting me over the head. It's like, come on, come on. Finally, in 2012, they said, okay, you have 1 year. If you do not get this done in 1 year, we will give it to someone else. Oh no, this is mine. You said it was mine. What? They're like, yeah, but if you're not going to do anything with it, then we need to get it onto someone who will. Okay, that got my attention. And within a year, because it came out, it was actually published and out February of 2013. So I got it done. And when I sat down and I actually started doing it, I laid everything out. It's like, okay, here are the issues I'm having. Then it very clearly became there's two parts to this book. And that's why you're seeing it this way. And then when I started, I did the old fashioned cut and paste. I literally had all these little papers all everywhere of all these pieces and parts, and I'm putting them together. And then when I sat down to start writing, amazingly, all this information just started flooding in, and my hands are flying over the keys. I just knew what to write. See, you just got to do it. You have to sit down and actually take the motion, and then it all starts coming in. So everything I kept saying, this should be happening, this should be happening, it did once I actually started moving.
It
Yeah,
did.
so.
Yeah.
And then it only took a few months, really, technically, once I sat down and just did it. Where I dragged my feet for 6.5 years, and then then it was done.
And finally it's there. And it's such a great resource. So many people are using it, and I always recommend it. And I think I've said this to you before. I would say it's got like a 98% accuracy where every time someone says that's exactly me.
Yeah.
I worked with a woman yesterday, and this is just like that. The drops first, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Make the connection.
They're like, how do you know? Are you psychic?
Yeah.
You're transparent. Your body is yelling.
I wanted to ask your opinion on this, that I find really hard to get my head around. I don't know if you do, but the subject of what your mother spoke about with people like the backdrop people, right? And then there was another example that she used in one of her lectures. I think it was with Guy Needler, and they were on a panel, I think, together, and they were discussing this, and it was saying, well, the room that you just left over there doesn't even exist. I know because, I know here on YouTube, a lot of your mother's lectures are being streamed 24/7 now, and people can just tune in and watch them anytime, and they're seeing some of these things. How would you recommend someone that's just finding this information, how to get their head around some of the more convoluted issues?
Mom was still in the stage of discovering it. And if like through convoluted 4 and convoluted 5, convoluted 5, she got a little bit more information. So she was, as she could, she got a little bit more, but she was still trying to wrap her head around it as well. And so she would ask these questions, but she still was making like her own hypothesis, trying to understand it. What always made sense, I never could wrap my head around what that was. And I think she couldn't either. I think that's why she kept probing around it and everything. What makes sense to me, the only thing that makes sense to me that I can wrap my head around, is that we are each backdrop people for each other. So it's not like there's a group of people. They are backdrop people, and they are the stage hand, whatever. They're the background, and they always are that service to humanity, or whatever you want to call it. And they don't have souls, and they don't have that, whatever there's all the saying is. That seems like such a, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense.
Mm.
But if you look at a stage and they're playing parts, okay, if I'm the lead actor, all the ones on the stage, they're backdrop. There's some backdrop, there's some supporting actors, and there's backdrop for me. But now, if you pick one of those people, and now they're lead in their play, well, now on the same stage, I'm a backdrop to them.
Yeah, great
That makes
analogy.
sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's kind of like this as well, but you have the control and you're just tuned into whichever channel you're watching. Now they're still existing. It's just that you're not aware of it because you're not tuned into that frequency, that station.
Exactly. And a huge epiphany that came just a few days ago. So I love that you're bringing this up, because I
Mm.
got that visual while I was doing another talk. And it was like, oh my gosh. And it was showing me, because a lot of times people say, but what about all of this, like, things that are happening over here? What about this and all the atrocities that are happening, blah, blah, blah. And that's when that came in. It was like, okay, so you're saying you can switch a channel, right? What you want to tune into. Now, what people get is like, but those children that are suffering over there, that means I don't care. And it was like, what this was showing me on this, when you change the channel, do you think the other channels care that you switched away?
No, this is it.
Yeah, it's just, where do you want to put your focus? It always comes down to that. The other channels will still exist.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They will still exist. It's just not where you're putting your focus. It's like, okay, we can play. It's not like oh, I like you more now because you're doing this. It's like energy. It's like electricity. I turned it on. Now it's going to perform. I turned it off. It's not offended. It's just, okay, we're not going to do this right now. Where are you putting your focus?
What
Yes.
we give our attention to expands. There's a lot of fear-based narratives, and there always has been, actually. If you look at history, there's always been fear-based agendas and people trying to control and manipulate. It's just the story of humanity. When you give your power away, when you focus on those things, they expand in your reality. You give your full attention to it, and then you become that thing that you're focused on. You want to create, do it by intention, focus on what you want, and then expand that out. We're seeing war break out in the world at the moment. You never are able to solve it with the level of consciousness that created it. So we need to be peace in our own lives, emanate that out into the world, not try to look for something outside of ourselves, understand that we are that, and then allow that to emanate into our environment. And isn't that what the concept of the volunteers is all about? Our energy is making a difference. Some of us don't even need to physically do anything. We just need to be.
You just need to be. And people say, but I got to do something. I got to do something. So then it's like, okay, then do what brings you joy. Do what brings you bliss, because then that's the energy that you're emanating.
Yeah.
And what perfect energy to put out there. If you're doing something that you dread and you're in drudgery about or in fear about, that's the energy you're putting out. You're very energetic. And so how about do what you love to do? It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you love doing it and it brings you joy, then that's what you're putting out. And that's a huge contribution.
From a very human level, I think a lot of people get caught in this. they see the atrocities in the world, and they feel like if they don't give it attention, that somehow they don't care. Kind of like the thing around forgiveness. We feel like if we forgive the person, then somehow we make it right, what they did right. But it's got nothing to do with the other person. It's all about us. And are we energetically attached through cords and being held back by the person?
Absolutely. I mean, you're saying it beautifully. All of this, you're saying it gorgeous. It's just a beautiful way of doing it. And that's exactly it. It's what are you attaching yourself to? What outcome or what vibration? What and is it really helping you? I mean, this is where we come down to is like, does it serve you? And some people are like, why does something have to serve me like it's my servant? It's not that. Is it benefiting you? Is it helping you? So look at what you're creating by doing that, where you're putting your attention, where you're putting all of that, where you're holding your grudges, where, all of that, it just pulls you down. The other person, they don't feel anything, or the event or whatever it is, it doesn't affect it whatsoever. It's that channel again. Remember, it's only you. It's each individual person. And so what are you doing with that? And that's where you have the control. It always comes down to, I want to control this. I want to help this. I want to help this. This is where it starts. You do this, you shift this, your world will change. Period. It cannot stay the same if you are different.
The world out there is just really a projection of our own consciousness. I loved how you articulated that about being in each other's play, and where this is our play, the camera's on us, we're the main part, and then that can change to another person, and then suddenly we're in the background. Such great analogies. I love using analogies when it comes to spirituality, because I think all the great masters always did. From Jesus, he used parables, to your mom gave you so many great examples.
Absolutely. I mean, this stuff, it's wonky and it can really mess with your head. So we need things that we can relate to.
Your mom said we're like cells in the body of God.
We are where we are, and we are exploring our consciousness. We are exploring our worlds, and how big is big? I mean, it all goes back to all of that. We're trying to understand the best we can with what information we have, and we're given what we can accept and what we can conceive. Our minds are so much more capable now than they were 10, 15 years ago. I mean, I can understand concepts that I would do that too before, because it's like it made my head hurt. Now it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I can get simultaneous time. I get this, and I get pictures and everything. But that's as we're evolving. See, we're able to understand that more.
Even past lives, where people weren't going to be interested in that. So now the concept of past lives, I mean, it's in pop culture now. A lot of people see it as actually become quite common that people believe in reincarnation. And yet, those years ago, it was so out there.
Her books were the very first ones. At that time, they were the only ones. And then now there's many, many more.
She set up a publishing company, which is obviously Ozark Publishing, still publishing many. I mean, how many authors does it have now? There's many authors, isn't there?
Many, maybe like 70. I don't know.
Wow. Like another great author, I touched on him before, is Guy Needler. He's written a lot of fantastic books. I believe they're published with Ozark Publishing. If you want to get into some more convoluted subjects,
I would always say mom's books were the deep end of the pool. Guy Needler's books are the ocean.
Yes.
It's like, you want deep, those are deep.
I know your mother would. She would read a lot of the manuscripts, wouldn't she, back then? And she would decide on the authors.
She read all of them back then.
Yeah.
She read all of them. So imagine that in addition to her writing and her doing sessions. I mean, yeah, but she was a fast reader, so she could. It was difficult for me. So the decisions, and that was her motto: was we don't publish junk. Only good stuff would be out there. She wanted things that had something different about them. Kind of like her work. When she found something, it's like it was new to her. And so she thought maybe people would want to hear about it. So that's where she would look for things that were different. It wasn't the normal everyday.
But I know your mother got her at one of her conferences, and she had a near-death experience. I can't remember her name. It'll come to me. I think over in Iraq. and
Oh. Hmm.
you,
Hmm.
you might know the name.
Yes, and I'm
It's
trying to,
escaped my mind.
something of impossible. Oh, wait a minute. I'm
Yes,
probably
application of impossible things. You nearly got it.
yeah, almost got it. I was like, impossible. That sounds like a show I'm watching right now. It can't be that. See, that's what the conscious mind does. No, that's a television show you're watching.
Yeah,
Really helps you to understand, absolutely, to see what's going on, like in that whole healing process. All these beings were there and they're working with her, and it's like that makes so much sense. But maybe Five Lives Remembered, or maybe it was a different one where the person it was asked, like, what's it like to die, and what is it? Maybe it's In Between Death and Life. That makes sense to
yeah,
be in that book. And they said it's no different. It's like getting up out of one chair and sitting in another.
yeah.
It's just an easy transition. You just move. It doesn't take a lot of thought. It doesn't take any exertion. You just move.
I notice in most of, well, a lot of my sessions, our ancestors come through. It might be a grandmother or a parent. They come through and maybe it's a soul contract from the other side. Often they say that, and they become a guide when they pass over. And sometimes someone will leave early so that they can come in as a guide. I've got that information quite a lot of times. I know your mother's helping so many people from the other side. Do you think she's come through for you personally?
And I was just talking to her this morning. She is always here, if I want her, if I need her. The one that's actually acting as my guide is my father.
When did you first discover that he'd come back as a guide for you?
It's a role he's playing, but I've had anybody does a reading for me, they're like, "Oh, your father's here. Your father's here." I
Yeah.
mean, he always comes through, and they said, "Oh, yeah, he's acting as a guide for you." So that's how I know that. Right after he passed, I sensed him in the room, but that would have been I don't expect that to be my first thought of it. That was just, I think, him being around, because I think they're around a lot right after they pass because you're trying to work through it. Um, I don't doubt that he's with all of us, all of the children. It's
Mm.
probably, I don't know that, but I know that readers, if I ever go to somebody, they're always, your father's here. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's so funny because then they'll describe him and everything. I'm like, yeah, that's him. So that's how I know it. And then I can talk to him. I'll talk to him all the time. If it's mom daughter stuff, I talk to mom. Here's another way I knew. I was taking flying lessons. Oh gosh, back in the 90s. And I finally got to where I could, the instructor got out and he's like, okay, take it around by yourself. I'm like, oh shoot, I got to do this by myself. And see, my father he did that when he was oh, he built his own plane. He was a pilot. It was just a private, pilot. And so I knew he flew. I mean, it was just back when I was a baby, he was doing that. And then I think he stopped after a while, but that was a big thing. And I knew about it. And so then I take it up again. And now I've got to come and I've got to land it. And I'm like, okay, how do we do this? Daddy, are you here with me? And I could feel him. He was in that other seat and he was keeping me calm. He was talking me through it. And he's like, okay, just go here. And so it was very evident that he was there with me at that point.
Mm.
And, but see, it's kind of like what you need, then they'll be there. And, at that time. So I think that's probably true for anyone. That's who your grandparents, your parents, I mean, those are the roles that they were playing. And so it makes sense that they would continue being with you in some capacity. It doesn't mean they're not doing their other things because they're multidimensional beings just like we are. So they're doing their other things as well as playing that role still for us. Well,
Yeah.
that's comforting. See, that helps me to know that they're still there. This is somebody that read the Akashic records and she was like, "Oh, your father's there." She's like, he um he's like he likes that you keep a picture of him in the room, but it's not necessary. He likes that you honor him by helping people understand that he was the first one and that he started all the hypnosis stuff and everything because I want him to be remembered. And they said he appreciates it, but it's not expected, it's not necessary.
I think you said this before. Your mother said it many times. You don't even necessarily have to do anything. It's just to be here. It might be your energy, even when you perhaps walk through a crowded mall, just the eminence of your energy is affecting people. They're not conscious of it. You're probably not even conscious. You're making a difference, kind of going through this time where there is a bit of a split, even in our own lives. Maybe people are sort of going out of our lives. They're not answering emails anymore. And they're just, this is a split that your mother's spoken about. It just slowly, not anything drastic, but just people are kind of moving towards what they are creating, what they are more aligned to.
Yeah, she was talking about like you'll notice that some people just drop out of your life, and
Mm.
it's very gradual. It's very so you don't even notice it until all of a sudden it's like, I haven't. Where is so and so? I haven't noticed. I haven't talked to them in quite a while. It's just and you have to actually focus to even bring that in, and then even that will probably slip away after a little bit. You'll forget about that again. And so it's just you're on different frequencies. You're in different places. Um, Something was coming to me earlier this morning that was really interesting, and I guess I could just say it, not have any context to it, but it kind of goes with that. But it was saying that we all, because I was asking about like why people get different answers, saying that they're all speaking to the same thing, whatever,
Yes. Oh, this is good.
and
Yeah.
okay, and they said, well, they are hearing what they need to hear. I'm like, but how does that work? And they said, well, it's based on their insecurities. They're creating from their insecurities. Okay, that was interesting. I'm like, okay, and then they're hearing things based on what they're creating. Okay, so see how those are all wrapped together. And so we create. I mean, I know we're pushing for our, I want this and I want this and I'm creating this and I'm always doing that, but they say we create from our insecurities. And then we hear what we need to hear to support whatever we're creating. So it's all around that. So that's, you're going to hear whatever supports that. So anyway, we'll go with that what you want, but that's the line of, I was
Yeah.
just asking why, why are we getting these different messages? Because I get a completely different one when I ask the same question that other people are asking. And they're like, because you're in a different space. You're not in that same space that they are. Makes sense. But it also people want an empirical truth. They's like, I need this, and they're like, it's not ever going to happen because my truth may not be your truth. And some people say, well, that can't be. But I think there might be a mix up of truth and fact. Somebody's like, this is a fact. Facts are always the facts, but it's the facts are where they are to support whatever is happening at that point. We have to be willing to be fluid with it and move with it because it's always shifting and changing. And
Mm.
that's where, what is your truth right now for where you are may not be your truth tomorrow for wherever you are at that point, maybe even the next hour. It can be that fluid that it's shifting. And I can feel the fear as I'm saying them. I can feel people afraid because it's like, well, then what do I hold on to? And they're like, you don't hold on to anything. that's the
That's the
thing. That's we're
point.
trying to hold on to something. They're like, that's not the role here. It's not to hold on. It's to go through this experience, learn, allow,
To flow
embrace,
with, yeah.
and then keep moving.
And your mother said something along these lines, not in the reality I'm in. So I think a woman was asking her a question during a conference, and she was referring to maybe a war at the time. Maybe it was the Gulf War. And she said, well, it's not happening in my world. It refers to something that you've touched upon. I use this example with people sometimes. Think about you're just walking down the street and a homeless person might come along and ask you for money, and you're in each other's reality, but
Mm-hmm.
the consciousness, they're living out one existence, one trajectory, and you're living out another. You're in each other's reality, but you're experiencing a completely different form of consciousness.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what it's like with this split, is that we can be on a completely different wavelength to even people in our immediate environment.
Absolutely. You can be on it's like you could call it another timeline, but it's different frequencies. It's whatever. And so in that way, it is not in your world. It's back to the changing channels. I mean, they're all on the same all out there, but which one are you clicking to? That's where you're choosing to be in your world, whatever you're focusing on there. So, um, and I would like to think, I don't know this, but it's like you might be aware of that homeless person, but they probably have no, it's like they're not affecting you. Not to say that it would affect you, but it's like you might not even notice that because it's so much not in
Yeah.
your trajectory or in your world, and that's why the channels, if you're not clicked on that channel, you are not aware. You might be roughly, okay, something's happening, but you're not aware of the details. You're not aware of anything because you're not focusing on it. You're not making it part of your world. At any point, you can make it part of your world. And you can get emotionally invested and you can get all wound up in that. Then now that's the channel you're focusing on.
You get even a sense with your mother's books, I think even in 5 or 10 years' time, some of these concepts of maybe we haven't understood certain things, but then in say 10 years' time, we're like, oh, we finally get it now because we have further context to understand. Perhaps it's new ways of thinking or technologies or whatever, and we finally can understand it. Often books have this effect, they can be more relevant 20, 30, 40 years down the track than they did when they were written.
Absolutely. Sometimes people have an issue with that connotation, like things have to serve us. And it's like, well, then how is it helping you? Is it really helping you to stay and just keep churning back in the past, churning all these emotions and all they said this and they said that, blah, 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 and all this, and just staying with that emotion? Or just say, you know what, that happened. I created it to learn something from. And so this is where we accept, I created that. I did that. But I did it to learn something from. Have I learned anything? What have I learned? See, then as soon as you start asking those questions, that starts moving you. Now you're moving away from it. Now you can let that go and then just, okay, now I did that one unconsciously. Now I want to do things consciously. And every time something's happening, okay, it's an experience to learn from. What am I learning? And sometimes you can't quite get to the learning right in the middle of it. Sometimes we react and we do all these things. Okay, that's fine. Get through that. And then as soon as you can get to where you can kind of have a breather and kind of look at things a little objectively, what am I learning? What is this all about? Then that immediately starts pulling you out of it, out of the emotions, and to be able to learn from it and now move on. They don't get stuck in the event.
Well, and your mother would always say, I think, so many references in the books that says, well, she doesn't need it anymore, so she can just let it go. You don't need it anymore. You don't need it anymore because you got the lesson. And so
right, you learned your lesson. You're the one that's holding on to it. If you're just keep dwelling on something, you are the one doing it. Nobody else. It's not the event. It's not the thing. It's you. And if you've learned what you need to learn from it, let it go. It has no more purpose. So, and I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, all good. I'll finish with this. It's just like, I love this. You've probably heard this famous quote from Dr. Wayne Dyer, who's passed on. He says, you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's not just a play on words. It's a really powerful thing. When I heard your mother teach me how to forgive, I needed to forgive my own father for some things in the past. The things changed because she said, if you're going to get into this new energy, you're going to go into the new earth, you're going to have to learn to forgive. And, when you change the way you look at things you look at change, and you just cut the cords, you tear up the contract, you say, I'm done, and you liberate yourself.
Absolutely. And that's when what I keep coming back to is that it's all in you, how you see things, what you're attaching to, whatever it is you want to view, that you're the one that's changing it. So if you're coming from this negative place, and you're going to see a negative world. If you're going to create that yourself. If you come from a positive place, if you change what you're focusing on, it keeps going back to that. If you change what you're focusing on the good or the whatever that you want, that you like, whatever you like, then you're going to bring more of that to you. So you're changing how you see the world. The world is going to support whatever it is you are choosing to see. Period.
Yeah, no.
I know it seems so simple, and some people, it can't be that simple. It is that simple. It really is.
Yeah, but it takes responsibility to accept that we do create, because it's so much easier for, I think, a lot of people just to blame circumstances, thinking we live in a random universe and it's just all this is an accident. But it does take maturity and responsibility to go, right, I've created it. I can uncreate it, or I can change it to something,
create something else. Yeah, I just create something else. Let that one go. I learned what I needed to from it. Maybe not to ever create it again. I don't know. There's something there. And then now I'll create something else.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And let it go.
let it go.
If there's any holding on to it, it's you're the one that's holding on. It's
Mm.
not holding on to you. You're the one that's holding on to it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us again today. I can't wait to do this again.
I always
Yeah.
love our talk.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Paul.
All right. Take care. We'll see.